Okay, Gavin Sheppard.
Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to say thanks for allowing us to come to your space, sit down and chop it up with you. We've been following you for a minute, so we're glad we got to sit down and talk.
Oh, it's my pleasure, man. I'm always good. What do I say? Good people connect.
Exactly.
That's the motto.
Exactly. So we're going to get into all the stuff that you're doing now. I want to first just start talking a little bit about your story personally, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Did you grow up in Toronto?
Yeah, I grew up in the West End of Toronto, at Lakeshore and Islington.
Okay.
Yeah.
How would you describe your upbringing around that area?
Man, it was, what do we say, is somewhere between, like, if you watch classic movies like Kids and Clockers.
Yeah.
Lakeshore, to me, is one of the most interesting parts of Toronto. That's where we're from, because you have every walk of life there. Like, the bottom of my street was gated houses and millionaires.
Yep.
Top of the street is co-ops housing. Every walk of life, religion, race, creed. You have Indian Shakti temple, you have a mosque, you have a Korean Presbyterian church, just everything in 4 corners to 5 blocks, So the one thing that a lot of us had in common growing up was hip hop, was rap music. And that was kind of the unifying thing, and that's what brought a lot of people together. So, my experience was just growing up in the culture, like seeing kids breakdancing on cardboard next to the ball courts, at 10th Street. The Ghetto Blasters out. I started selling mixtapes at 14 at Islington Station and Kipling Station, hustling like mixtapes for older heads,
Oh.
And then from there, we started a clothing line. I was doing co-op at Front Runner. It's like a classic spot in the West End for shoes and clothes and stuff by Kipling Station. And we started a little clothing line out of there.
What was the name of the line, if you don't mind me asking?
Manifest. Yeah, Manifest. My boy Raju actually came up with it, but there was like 4 or 5 of us who all went really, really separate ways actually in life. And though we all like remain cool, but it was, so, like I grew up entrepreneurial and always also trying to figure out like how I played into the culture and how I was a part of it, how I can contribute essentially. Knowing that the music is predominantly like from Black and brown communities. I'm a white male, and how do I fit in, And so I was always trying to figure out also how to contribute, I think, as well. And that was a lot of my upbringing is coming up around that,
Was hip hop your first venture into entrepreneurship, or were you doing other things before your introduction to hip hop or during?
That's a great question. It's definitely my introduction to entrepreneurship. Hip hop has been the introduction to me for a lot of things, from friends, culture, but also like books, like types of thinkers, like I grew up listening to all sorts of music. Like I definitely like fun music and street music, but like my favorite stuff was like Black Star, like Mos Def, Talib Kweli, like the whole Raucous Records movement for a while, Boot Camp Click, Wu-Tang, of course, like Nas is one of my all-time favorites, of course Jay as well, but like more of an East Coast head, but definitely like folks that were militant but knowledge of self-driven and were community-driven, and preach kind of those messages amongst the realities of what folks were facing as opposed to the glorification of what folks were facing. So I really believed in that idea of like hip-hop being the CNN of the ghetto type of idea, where it could, but what I guess my flip on it was the idea that it could also be like a Trojan horse in a lot of ways, and meaning that we could use it as a vehicle to affect change, and to kind of push different messages forward or different ideas forward, right? Like that's what culture is. Culture shifts culture,
100%. So 100%. And that's one of the main reasons we wanted to sit down with you personally today, because of you and your team, and which the part you guys have played in shifting culture for a very long time. So it kind of brings it all back to that.
For sure.
When you were growing up, in your younger years, I would say teenage years, maybe a little bit earlier, what did you see yourself doing? Was it always something in hip hop, or did you have one of those childhoods, I wanted to be like a firefighter, or did you have one of those?
No. It definitely, like, from when I started thinking about an idea of a career, especially if you're talking high school, like age, teenage years, like it was always to do with music or street fashion or culture. Like I also grew up in arts. Like my mother's a painter, my father's a journalist or writer. You know what I mean? Like I grew up like Fridays, my mom's going painting with her friends and they're drinking, doing their thing and whatever. And like dancing Andy's coming over to turn up in our place till whatever time. Like
Yeah.
that was a part of my upbringing as well. You know what I mean? Like my whole family is involved in different types of form of art or culture or whatever too. So I just saw it as a natural progression. And I think like the mix of, you know, my mother being an artist and my father being a journalist, both of them telling stories, trying to push different ideas, that's what kind of like rubbed off on me. And whereas I'm not necessarily artistically gifted, but I get excited about things, and and other people get excited about things when I get excited about things. And I'm good at articulating that and getting people to understand why they should care about something. And so that's been my place, is like finding the art that I really care about, or the people that I think, you know, are special and that other folks should know about, you know?
How much would you say having not only both parents in the household, but both parents who kind of understood the importance of creativity, how important would you say that was to shaping who you are today?
It's everything for me. Like I'm very lucky, you know, in that regard. Like out of the vast majority of our friends, I was one of the only people that had, you know, that reality at home, and it made a world of difference. Like a lot of people call my dad, you know, like, and so it's a real thing, and you recognize that. And I recognized it, seeing it, like, not necessarily like up front, but like you start to look back, you start to realize certain things, you know, like the role that he played in a lot of other people's lives as well. And I see also how much of the things that my father said to me and that my mom said to me, but these sayings that my father would usually say, that I turn around and say to so many young people now and young creatives, you know, like, so like, and it's wild to me how much of them, I guess, even transcended into pop culture and shit, like, or that's not transcended to, because that's absolutely did not come from him, but like how much of them relate to pop culture, like how, for example, he would always say it's a marathon, not a race, you know, and of course like Nip, like who years later becomes one of my favorite rappers and also community leaders, you know, and heroes, like obviously he's preaching that same thing. So I was like, oh, something must have been okay, cool, that's actually a real thing then. And so I turn around and I catch myself saying all these things that my father would say to me, and I recognize like that was incredibly important, you know, to have both of those support. And to answer your question, I guess, as well as about the arts, like there was pressure to do, a little bit of pressure to do like formal school and all that type of thing, but there was never too much because they'd made their own paths, even though they'd been formally educated, you know. But like I'd come home and there'd be like the book on my bed of just like schools to apply to or something, but there'd never be a conversation about it. Mm-hmm. And I'd be like, yeah, okay, cool. I'm not getting into college. My grades, like I was in summer school every year. Like I applied to every community college. I got denied. I didn't get my high school diploma. So, you know, like that's my reality. So entrepreneurship was going to be my path. You know, we started the first iteration, the first version of the remix project, IC Visions, when I was in grade 12 going into OAC, right? Okay. So like, I was in OAC rather. I was grade 13.
No, that's actually going to be the next thing I wanted to go into. How did you find yourself? I know that you said you always admired people in hip hop that focus on community and talked about things from a reflective standpoint rather than a glorifying type of standpoint. How did you find yourself first drifting towards the charity community type space? What was your first step towards that?
I always say like it came from like a selfish place. And
what do you mean by that?
Like, so two things. One is basically like growing up in our neighborhood, there was one, I talk about this story sometimes, but there's like one guy that we all used to follow basically, you know, we'd all hang around with, for better or for worse, as the leader of the group of friends.
Yep.
And so he used to bring us to that community. Every once in a while I'd be like, yo, let's go to that community center. I want to check the internet. I want to check whatever. Like, all right, whatever, man, that place is lame. Like, fine, whatever. And we go over there. But I didn't know a lot of people. I played sports, you know, but that was my only real connection, because otherwise I would just read. Like, I read a lot of books when I was a kid. My mom worked at the library up the street, and so I'd just be, you know, either with her or at home just reading. Mm-hmm. So I didn't I'm like outgoing introvert, outgoing, like back and forth depending on the situation, you know, but more times I'm by myself. So for this was like the one place where I then ended up starting to making some friends and started like connecting with different people. And then he ended up moving back to New York. He was from Jamaica, Queens, New York. And he went back there and everything kind of just fell apart. Like nobody was around, nobody was.
He was
like,
kind of the glue.
Yeah, he was the glue. So I was like, "Fuck, how do we get people back together again?" So I went to the community center. I was like, "You know, you guys need a hip hop community center. You need a spot where it's gonna like, you know, we're gonna have music and culture, and we're gonna be able to bring people together. We're gonna learn about like the music business and shit." Because, again, I was already selling mixtapes from before. Then we had the clothing line, so it was. You know, we had friends that were rapping, like, and I was trying to manage them, you know, when I was in grade 12, like with a little briefcase kind of thing, like, yeah, I'm the manager, like, you know, like we were always trying something. So we're like, yeah, we need a spot for us, you know, like it's cold, it's outside, you know, come winter, like there's nowhere, blah, blah, blah. So we actually wrote a grant, but I didn't know how to write a grant. So I wrote this like essay and like why we should have a hip hop community center basically. And, the people at the spot, God bless them, Bill Worrell, initially, like really helped me think through like what it meant, and then also helped like take some of that stuff and plug it into a couple grants, and then was like, okay, cool, go get some proof. So we went out, we did surveys, we went to the Sherway Gardens, the mall, the movie theater, we went to like different schools, whatever, just getting people to fill a little survey, like what would you want to see in a hip hop community center? You know, spot to break dance, graffiti, music, whatever. Yeah. And from all that, we pulled that together. We pulled together our first little like focus group through an event in the community, and basically just like, you know, brought folks together to talk about like what do they want to see. But we did it through music and we did it through advertising. Like we're having a dance battle. There's going to be DJs. There's going to be MCs. There's free food.
And there was nothing like that previously.
Nah, so yeah, not at all. And so we brought everyone in, and as people were eating the food, we just locked the door and we're like, yo, if you're gonna eat, you know, answer a few questions, this is what we're trying to do, blah, blah, blah. And then it turned into like, supposed to be 15, 20 minutes, turned into like an hour, how long, we're just arguing, people standing on pool tables, like, and it was amazing. And so from that, we were able to take the surveys, we were able to take that focus group, and we were able to take the essay, pull it together, and we sent it off for these grants, and we were able to get a small $10,000 grant that got us started, and that's how it all started. But it started with us trying to get on and wanting a place for ourselves and our friends, and then being like, getting a little older and being like, oh, looking out for the little brothers and sisters of our friends and the cousins and the friends of friends, and then word starts getting out that we're doing this stuff and we're learning as we're growing, so we're starting to invite people in, and you know,
start from there.
Yeah.
So that's dope, man. And that was like you say high school.
99, 2000 was when IC Vision started.
Yeah.
And then till 2005. And then 2006 is the Remix Project was launched, which is the remix of the IC Visions project.
That's how the name came about?
Yeah, we didn't have a better name. We literally were calling it the remix of the IC Visions project until we can come up with a better name. And then, yeah, we were like, fuck, we can't, like, we just got something for these grants. We needed like a title for these grants. So we're like, all right, the Remix Project, we'll come up with a name later. And then here we are, you know, 15 years later.
Okay, so let's get a little bit into that, if you don't mind. So yeah, that's dope. I didn't know that's what the name came about. So the Remix Project inception, you said, is 2006?
2006.
2006, around those times. What was the original idea for the Remix Project, and who were some of the key members that were involved in bringing that idea to life?
So we were running IC Visions as basically a drop-in 2 days a week, where it was like first come, first serve. You'd sign up on a list to get in the booth. Everyone would have time to make one song, and then you're out and the next person, and blah, blah, blah. And then we had
the same space?
Yeah, well, we'd moved across the street now. We were in the basement of a small business center, and we'd rented our first place ourselves. So we were no longer in the community center, but we were trusteed by them. So they were acting as basically our parent organization, and then we had our own space there. And so 2 days a week, drop in. We also had a small computer for graphic design, but we just had one computer, you know what I mean? And it was like some business advice, but peer-to-peer, like we were just trying what we could do. And essentially, 2005 happened, which in the city, if you know the history of the city, of course, is called the Summer of the Gun, which was unfortunately a really violent time in the city, much like the periods that we've been going through recently. You know, a lot of this goes in waves, you know? And so at that time, folks were like, what do we do? What do we do? What's the response, from government to nonprofits, and everyone just trying to figure it out. And there was a young guy named Kane Ba who sat on, at the time, Mayor Miller, David Miller's community safety secretariat. So they brought all these people together from different walks of life, and he was one of the youth representatives. Okay. So he's from downtown, and he'd heard about IC Visions and was like, you know what? There's a program in the West End that is intimately connected with this community of people who find themselves on both sides of the gun. And that's not the only community they're connected to, but there is like a lot of frontline work there that's happening. And he knew about a program that had predated us called Fresh Arts that was started in the 90s as a direct result of the Yonge Street riots, right? Which was like the riots after the Rodney King trial, where there was a bunch of people and an explosion of anger and frustration over the treatment of black people and people of color, including in this city. And there was actual riots on Yonge Street, right? And like, it was a real crazy time. Yeah. And so there was a reaction at that point, and Bob Ray's government created Fresh Arts. And out of Fresh Arts came Director X, Cardinal, wow, Julie Black, Choclair, Wylook, a host of like Foundation, Solitaire, I'm pretty sure was in Fresh Arts. Rodala, I think, although I might just be naming the circle at this point.
Yeah, what to say.
But most of those folks, yeah, like why they are that was because of the relationships built through this program, right? Okay. And a lot of other people like that are community leaders, right? That like are now active in the city in different areas and different like walks of or parts of the culture, like came from that space as well. They were the generation before us. And then there was a total lack of funding, and the program unfortunately couldn't continue. And then there was a huge gap, which was our generation coming up. We had no after school programs. We had nothing because it was the Harris government cuts and blah, 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 right? So it's interesting, but you see this like dip when all these community programs were happening and all this investment in youth and conversations around youth and blah, blah, blah. It's not right away, but within the next couple of years, you start to see this like dip, especially if it's done in conjunction with other like ways of community development, right? Focuses on food, housing, etc. But when you're really investing in youth, you see this dip, and then people feel, oh, there's a dip. We don't have to focus on this anymore. Let's turn our attention to this, and this. And then we cut this, we cut that, we cut this. And then a few years later, inevitably, there's this rise again. There's a lack of guidance. There's a lack of like infrastructure, all these types of things. So that was the dip, and that's where we were. So we came in, and he was like, man, I know about Fresh Arts. You guys are doing your own thing. He started educating us about it because we didn't know. Mm-hmm. And he was like, what would you want to do if you could do something like more, if you had deeper investment, And so we ourselves like had gone through a lot of crazy experiences and unfortunately had lost friends during that year. And so we kind of were also in this weird place where we were like, well, what are we doing? Like, if we're working, we're trying to push this and push that, but like our own friends are dying. Like, this is fucked. So we took a step back and we were like, okay, like, what are we doing wrong? What can we do better? What kind of investment is actually needed in people's lives to support? And we're really looking at like developing a program that had a wraparound support system. So we advertise with Remix Excellence, artistic excellence, because that's how you should understand our people, because that's who they are. They're global leaders in terms of music, fashion, video, photography, graphic design, what have you. But what we understand is you can't focus on being excellent to that level if you don't have the supports around you, or you're involved with the justice system right now, or you're involved with the education system is not going well, blah, blah, blah. So what kind of supports can we build around that to allow people to have excellence? I think one thing that is really important, has been the idea that we continue to advertise the excellence, and just knowing that the rest of those wraparound supports don't need to be trumpeted so much, because you want people to be understood a certain way, and we initially were like, yeah, we have all this incredible talent, from the community, this and that, and because we were getting like crime prevention grants and gun violence grants and stuff like that, folks understood the people coming through the program also a certain way. And everyone loves that idea of like, yeah, I want to help this young man or this young woman change their life. That's incredible. And they're like, cool, I need an internship. And they're like, wait, at my place? Like,
Yeah, like, no,
I meant I love the idea of it happening. Like, I didn't mean in my office. Like, what the, oh. And you're like, oh, okay.
You want to help from a distance.
Yeah, so we had to also do a PR thing, of course, and understand it that just as much as we had to appeal to these young people on a certain level where if we aren't as cool as 50 Cent, we lose. Like, we have to walk a certain way, talk, understand, carry yourself, like, but like dress, whatever, all these things that these young people are going to pay attention, because we're not trying to capture the attention of the student class president that's already doing well. We're trying to capture the attention of the person who doesn't see themselves in that space, but it sees themselves in this other space. So we say, get money, make change. We're not saying say no to drugs. We're saying get money, make change. What does that mean? That means if you're going to get money, do it for a reason. Hustle towards something, whatever that is, and let's make a change in our personal lives. Let's make a change in our professional lives. Let's make a change if we're truly blessed in our community. And if we're really gifted, the world, let's shift the culture. But that's where it starts, right? It's get money, make change, but it's always followed by community over everything. Because no matter if you need a sandwich or a record deal, you go to who you know.
So when we're talking about the actual infrastructure and the way the remix, class is set up now, how did that come about? Where did that come from?
It came from, so like the setup of the remix class essentially came from, or like basically, so the way that we decided to design the remix project came from kind of a host of different experiences. It came from school, it came from Motown. It came from, like really looking at like, Berry Gordy kind of like model of putting different creatives in a room to get the best possible product. It came from like Andy Warhol's like factory, a factory of creatives that were all working together again, like in different mediums. And it came, to be quite honestly, philosophically from the Zapatistas, which is a Mexican revolutionary movement, primarily, indigenous led. That really came to, I guess, into focus in '94 and has been existing ever since in a really powerful way. And their writings were something that was really inspiring to me in terms of the philosophies of like everything for everyone, nothing for ourselves, and that type of idea, where it just struck a chord in me. And then the idea of like how people would interact and engage and how it could support one another. All those types of things rung true. So it was a mix of like all these things, but then again through the lens of like rap music.
So what are some of the barriers that you guys faced early on in the remix, trying to get it to the stage where you saw it in your mind?
I mean, some of the barriers in terms of like getting it from the inception of it and like this like great idea to real life and to something that you could walk in through the doors was definitely just being able to educate as much as you were applying to funders. Unfortunately, popular culture, like the understanding or the pop culture image of rap music is pretty violent, misogynistic, and can scare off a lot of like, especially community funders and like government who want to invest in young people, right? And so if their understanding is only this limited slice of what urban music and culture offers and is, then you could see why they wouldn't want to fund it. And so because that was the pop culture understanding of it, especially in like the late 90s, 2000s, there was a lot of education about like, no, this is a culture based on respect. This is a culture based on skill. This is a culture based on merit,
And it's journalism more so than
it's and it's also like an entry point. It's an entry point to a conversation because what we're talking about is culture. And so if folks want to contribute in fashion, they got to understand business. So you want folks to pay taxes and be in business? Well, cool. Like, here's the entry point. Something they care about, something they're interested in, something they're passionate about. that we can then be like, now you can learn these skills. There's a reason to learn these skills. So you're engaged. It's a passion-based approach is what we say, right? So we take a passion-based approach to learning and to community development. Not telling people, hey, come here, but going to where the people are.
Where you're needed, where those resources are needed the most, type of thing?
Yes, where the resources are needed most, but also in terms of where people's starting line is, like, and where they're at culturally. And that's when I say like the Zapatistas and stuff, that was a big learning point as well, right? Is like going to where people are at, engaging with where people are. Don't being like, hey, come over here, this is a good idea, this is the way you should be. It's like, no, you gotta go over to the staircase and you gotta be like, yo, Mandam, what's going on?
Yeah.
Yo, so, oh, you're trying to do the closing? Like, this is sick. Like, yo, do you know that you could access this? Do you know that you can blah, blah, blah? Okay, cool. Yo, come over here, blah, blah, blah. Like, you have to go where people are at. You have to be able to speak authentically. You have to be of that culture. You know, and so at least in order to get, I think, the best results, you know?
So just to shift a little bit more into the music side of things, because I know, like you said, remix is so interconnected with the music scene here in Toronto and has been for some time. What changes have you noticed in recent years in the Toronto music scene? And what do you think, I know we talked a little bit about this off camera, but what do you think that the Toronto music scene is lacking right now to let the underground kind of rise up to the point where it's profitable for these young kids?
I think the best change that we've seen has been the spirit of collaboration in the city. I think the reason why Toronto producers are winning so much, like there's over 10 producers that have publishing deals, you know, that we can name. That's incredible, like compared to years ago. You know?
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, there's a lot of people with wins and they're eating off of that, paying rent off of that, off of music now.
Yeah.
I think that the spirit of collaboration has been one of the most important things to seeing people succeed, because you're seeing these different producers cooking up together, getting the best ideas, sharpening each other's steel, so to speak, steel sharpens steel, and coming out with incredible sonic like beats and melodies and whatever, and those are getting placements and people are getting publishing deals. You've got over 10 different people that I can name off the top of my head with publishing deals in the city internationally. It's incredible. So I think like that spirit has been a very real thing, because when I was growing up, Toronto was called the Screwface capital. That was like the nickname, was the Screwface, right?
For sure.
And I really do credit like T-Rex and Brock and Lowe and those guys and the women that have built that brand of One Love TO in a lot of ways of also helping shift the narrative, you know, from going from the Screwface capital to One Love TO. And there's a lot of different people in this city that have pushed a version of that narrative and have contributed to this reality that are changing. I'm not trying to say it was these folks that did that, but I think there's just a beautiful like flip of things, you know, where it was proclaimed that the Screwface is dead, it's One Love TO, you know, this is inclusive, this is that type of space. And that's what I think has really led to advancement in so many other parts of the game too, seeing like how some of the clothing labels are popping off and things are starting to happen, is because stores are saying, okay, we can do pop-ups, we can do this, that, blah, blah, blah. Like, it's...
After doing what you guys have been doing in the city for so long, you've probably seen so many people come through the program, go on to do amazing things. Who are some of the alumni first that came out of Remix that people might be familiar with that you're proud of?
I mean, I'm proud of everyone that came out
For
of
sure.
Remix. Don't frame the question that way. The first half of that was great. But no, I mean, genuinely, I really am, because if you do complete the program, 100%. Then that means that you invested 100%. In yourself, you know, and you really did something. There's a lot of folks that think what if, and you know, I could just, or whatever, but if you actually get up every day and you go to work and you get this diploma, you graduate, that means something, because we don't just hand it out.
Fair. So I think a better question would be...
No, I'm just...
No, I get it. No,
you know what I mean?
I get it, but I think, who are some people, just to take the first half of that question, like you said, who people might be familiar with that they don't necessarily affiliate with Remix, but Absolutely. Did come from that class? Yeah,
for sure. I mean, like Get Fresh Company, right? Jabril Jala came out of the business program. And I mean, that's the first brand that we've ever has come through our doors that have got bricks and mortar, you know. Although Legends League as well would be like, they taught, Brian Spiritu actually co-founded the creative arts program, or founded the creative arts program, with the rest of the team. and largely built that brand from the space until he was able to do it into his own spaces and whatnot. Wonder Girl, Francis Scott Heat, of course, Rich Kid is like the student to the teacher, was in 1.0, the very first round,
Wow.
has gone off and done like incredible things around North America, and won a Juno and all this stuff, MMVAs. And,
stuff.
well, now he's teaching.
Yeah,
so now the
yeah.
student becomes the teacher, right? And so he's teaching at the program and is continuing to follow his own career and doing the other things, but like, it's pretty beautiful, to be honest with you. Of course, Jessie Reyes is a very large, like, I was gonna say large mouthpiece. I don't want to be disrespectful, Jessie. I love you, but she would probably die laughing at that anyways. So, but has been like an incredible champion, for the program.
I noticed that as well. She makes sure to.
She's been amazing.
To pay homage and
and like
pay respect
way too generous sometimes, and I love her and we all love her for that. But that's just who Jessie is.
I think that it just speaks to how much a program like this can help people that may not have had those resources, or just a network, like you said, of creatives truly do it. It's nice when like a humble soul truly appreciates it and wants to let the world know, like, yeah, I'm here, I've arrived, but these were my beginnings. I think it's dope when people come back and do say that.
No, for sure. I would say Future the Prince is an incredible example of that as well. Like he's
I didn't know
he was graduated from our business program. I mean, that's where a lot of that community was formed, right? And he very quietly has been an incredible champion for the program and has done so much, like out of pocket financially, and also just supporting and opening doors quietly and making things happen as well. Like, I can't say enough good things about that, and like how much he's done it without asking for anything, and in fact actually staying away from the spotlight. He'd probably cringe if he heard me talking like this right now.
That's kind of his thing a little bit from what I've gathered.
It is, but he's a good, genuine human, and I'm really just glad to see people like that win.
I've seen clips just myself personally, if I'm not mistaken, I believe on YouTube back in the day, maybe like Rex, Drake, a couple people in the remix. What, if any, is Remix connection with OVO?
It's family, like there's just a lot of good folks just like who've gone on to become a part of that movement. And OVO as a company has been a great partner to the organization, hiring alumni from our programs like graphic designers and photographers and social media managers and stuff like that, and actually employing people and giving salaries and jobs to the organization. So there's just been a really kind of beautiful symbiotic relationship where they're looking for young talent to employ, and we happen to be a space looking to find employment for young talent. So it's just been a great relationship, and so there's a lot of folks involved with the organization at this point, and they've been a phenomenal partner to us.
I came across online a while back, not from sure where, Remix Project in Chicago. Is that directly affiliated with Remix?
Yeah,
here? Is
absolutely.
it all one family?
Yeah, absolutely. So the co-founder of the Remix Project, so there's Kende Ba and Drex Jankar, right? And so Drex actually went then to Chicago and founded a chapter in Chicago because he was living there for a few years while he's still working for Remix, but working remotely for the large part and traveling back and forth. And while there, built a lot of authentic relationships and basically kept hearing about the need for something like the Remix Project out there. And when folks started to hear about what he did back home, they were like, oh man, you got to bring that over here. So eventually the crazy guy did it, and God bless him.
He's the kind of person to just...
He's like, so we always have this thing called the Make It Happen gang, and we used to joke, we'd be like, yeah, Mr. Make It Happen. And then, but he's Mr. Get It Done. So I might open the door, but he's going to close the deal, like absolutely. Yeah. And that partnership has worked so well over the years. And there's so many different team members and players over the years that have contributed. Amanda Paris, T-Rex, we're all staff, right? At the place, Brian Espiritu, Brian Brock, Soze, like just so many, Myrna, like, it's overwhelming to actually start keeping naming people that have contributed to it and created the culture of the space. But like when you asked about like T-Rex earlier, like he's a founder. I consider him a co-founder, even though he was one of our first hires. You know, like he'd be like, you know, Steve Jobs or whatever, and then there's employee number one, like, you know, and has the benefit and the shares or whatever, like. Yeah. You know, he founded because when we started, we just had the recording arts and the business program. Okay. And so Soze was running the recording arts and T-Rex was running the business. Yeah. But he breathed life into that and then ran it for years. So like his DNA is a part of that thing, right? And same with Brian Spiritu and Brian Brock, who were there from day one and created the creative arts program and created that whole essential infrastructure with us all bouncing ideas off each other about what works, what doesn't work, and blah, blah, blah. But that's, again, like it's hard to, remix is very much a movement. And I keep referring to Zapatistas, but like that's what it is. It's like, it's a leaderless movement because it's led by the people, right? So like most Def said on Black on Both Sides, that album is like, people always say, where's hip hop going? You know, and like hip hop's some mountain a giant in the mountainside. He's like, but hip hop is us. Hip hop's going where we're going, right? And that's what remix is to me. Remix is us. So if music starts to shift a certain way and the music in the streets is more electronic and more this or whatever, or it's goes some direction that I can't even guess right now, that's what remix needs to be.
Shift with the
it can't be sitting there going, no, don't forget about the 4 elements of hip hop. Are you dumb? Like that has no relevance. What has relevance is communication through visual arts. That has relevance.
Regardless of what the sound is.
Exactly, regardless if it's graffiti or if it's graphic design, right? And then how it evolves and how it evolves. But it's communication of visual ideas, right? That's important. So what is the natural entry point to teach people that? Depends where they're at. Go to where the people are.
I think that's really important that you said that because I feel like a lot of the people that do stick around for a long time in spaces are people that kind of grasp that concept.
Right.
And people that don't are the kind of people who are stuck in there, in the ways of that's not how it used to be when I was doing it. Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really important point. Just a couple more questions. Doing this thing for so long with the Remix Project, doing what you do with so many different people, what motivates you still to this day to go out there and do what you do? What's your biggest motivating factor right now?
Well, my role has evolved in a major way over the last couple of years. Like I'm no longer the executive director of Remix. I'm not involved on a day-to-day level. I'm on the board of directors and I've transitioned there along with Drex and a few other folks as well. And so I'm still involved in a lot of the large conversations and the overarching direction. But there's a woman named Annalie Bonda who is incredible and has been leading the ship or steering the ship, you know, for the last few years. And so my kind of life's work has remained very much the same, which has been how do you support developing talent outside of the margins for whatever reason that deserves to be heard and deserves to be known, and that hopefully also can shift culture a little bit. And so, you know, now I work in more the management side, and then I have an independent label with U Music called Public Records. And so with Quiet is Kept, which is our management company with E1 that does strategy work, we work with a host of different artists and brands. And then with Public Records, we're dedicated to putting out primarily singles and EPs and really looking to kind of bridge that gap between folks that are at a place of real kind of, again, excellence, but haven't reached discovery yet, and being able to catapult them into discovery. And it's my work has changed, but has remained largely the same, you know, whereas before I was more involved in creation and navigating different types of structures and systems. It's just new systems and structures, but still arts creation and helping artists be their best selves.
What would you say to a kid right now watching this, or somebody who may be familiar with the Remix Project that for whatever reason is not sure how to get his foot in the door or her foot in the door? What's the best advice you would give to them?
To get in the door of the music industry or in the entertainment or the Remix Project?
I would say both. So first I would say if they want to be affiliated, if they hear this and they say, wow, that sounds like the resources I need, it sounds like a community I might see myself being involved with, what are the steps they literally have to take to be involved? Like, what's the process to get involved?
Yeah.
And then if you had advice maybe for a young artist.
I would say that for anyone that wants to find out more information, the best way is to literally go to the website, theremixproject.com. You have right there a button says apply. And you can read up more on each academy, as we call it. Okay. And we use a lot of like official language because we also want to demystify it. We want to be able, we call it a thesis project. We have deans of the recording arts program, but it's so people can understand like, oh, it just means teacher, it just means project, it just means whatever, like you're within this space. And it also helps that when we're going to like corporate partners, we say, yeah, it's the dean of this thing. This person just completed their thesis project and they did a major in vocal recording and a minor in engineering, right? So
it makes it look that much more structured.
Yeah, you just understand it differently, right? So I think that's a lesson that anyone can take as well, is like start to understand yourself differently and present yourself differently, and folks will be forced to understand you that way, because you're giving them no other option. Every day you have the ability to recreate yourself. Every day you have the ability to live up to that image and to that identity. It's up to you to choose which one to live up to, right? So I think the other thing I would say to artists is that, and creatives, is that if you do not, the other thing I would say to artists and to creatives is that you don't need the Remix Project. I think that the Remix Project is a beautiful and incredible space, and if you can access it and have access to it, then you should do it, absolutely. But you do not need the Remix Project. There are plenty of people who have succeeded from the city of Toronto that do not have an affiliation with the Remix Project, that we all admire, that we respect to the most and support and lift up as part of our community, but have no affiliation and we have no claim to support it. So I would say what you need is to believe in yourself and unreservedly do that, and so that other people start to do that after you. Because the older I get, the more I realize that nobody has this shit figured out. Nobody. There's people who have some experiences who can kind of say this worked or this didn't work, but everything is going to be based on your experience and the context of what's happening in that moment around you and within the larger world. And people are always looking for confidence, because none of us know what the fuck is going on or what to do next half the time. And so they're looking for confidence. So if you're confident, then people are going to go, oh shit, maybe, yeah, okay, like, yeah, that guy seems like he knows what he's doing. She seems like she's strong. Cool, let's follow her. Like, that's literally what it is half the time, is confidence. It's being able to like unabashedly believe in yourself. That's why people like Kanye become Kanye, because he's a maniac about how he believes in himself, but that's what it took to get to that space. And I don't think that we necessarily need to be like Kanye.
But it's that level of belief and confidence in
right, of course, because Jay has the same confidence in himself, but he carries himself very differently.
Displays it different.
Right? Yeah. And so this is not to further divide a Kanye and Jay beef, but nobody's watching this anyways on that level. Shout out The Rock. I just think that is the most important thing you could have. People really look for confidence, and when you're on stage and you're performing, you can't give it 2/3. You can't give it 4/5. You have to do all in every time. If you're going to display your art, it has to be the best. And you shouldn't hold it back forever and let that window of opportunity shut, and pass by. I think that there's room to grow in the public eye, but you should have a very strong understanding of who you are, what you're doing, and why you're doing it while you're growing.
I think that's a problem a lot of artists face. You've probably seen yourself. They're constantly saying, I'm not ready, and then 10 years go by, and you haven't put out anything.
Yeah.
And then sometimes it's too late.
And then they start saying, oh yeah, it's too late or whatever, and you're just like, are you fucking kidding? Like, DMX dropped his first album at 30, so like, if you want to claim that as your reason, go ahead. But Jay was 26, he's a billionaire, I don't know. So there's a lot of stories like that. Like I was on my face 2 years ago again, going through transitions and figuring shit out, and like, okay, I'm decent again. Like, I'm figuring shit out. It's just, that's life. It's ups and downs. Like it starts and stops. But like, again, you have the ability to literally create who you are and live up to it. so do it, and eventually more and more folks will start to catch on, you know? And keep putting yourself in situations and environments. Like, you can't stay in the same environment, in the same circle, and expect things to change. And I know that can sound cliche, but it's so important to be said.
Yeah, but
you know, it really is, because we have our safety blankets, right? We have our comfort zones, we have our safety blankets, and it's not like we got to be like, yeah, fuck the homies, but like, not at all. But it is like, yo, I got to go do this thing. I'll see you later if you're not going to come with me, because it's cool. There's no love lost. But don't be mad at me if I just see you at birthdays, christenings, and God bless funerals, because I'll be there for the important things, but I got to do this thing because I'm trying to be great.
And navigate my own path.
That's it. And we all have our paths to navigate, and we got to support each other along the way of navigating those paths. If people are not supporting us, then cool. Maybe they give us something else. They give us laughter. They give us joy. That's incredible. That's really important. They should be a part of your life, but understand what part of your life they are, you know? And then build the team that you need around you, because no person is an island. And the reality is, like, you can't be the best at everything. I'm not good at really negotiations. I hate money. It's a really awkward conversation with me. I'm very bad with everything to do with that stuff. Credit, all of it, just terrible. I have to recognize that and put somebody in my life who is very strong at that, so that way I can be successful.
The strength in knowing your flaws.
That's it. The most important thing that you can know as a leader is what your weaknesses are, because then you know how to build a team. Then you know, okay, I don't need another me. I'm me. I'm already great. What I need is someone and other people who can help me be better at what I'm already great at. I don't need them to do what I do. I need them to do what they do so I can do what I do.
People you can pull on when you know that's not your strong point, like you said,
That's
that
it.
you know that will excel in that, and you're going to have skill sets that they don't. So I think that's...
Exactly. And so you complement each other, right? And that's, again, like community over everything. Like, I think that it's very important to recognize the difference between, you know, people that you would trust with your kid and people that you would trust with your business. And that's a hard lesson for a lot of us to learn, because your child is more important than your business. But that decision about who to trust with your business is going to affect the rest of your life and your happiness, as well as your money, your income, right? And not everyone is both. There's a lot of people I would trust with my kid that unfortunately I wouldn't trust with my business. And there's people that, you know, I would trust to run my business, but I don't necessarily need them around my kid. But
it's important to understand the difference.
It's very important to understand the difference and who plays what role in your life as you're trying to advance, as you're trying to grow.
What do you want to be remembered as?
Someone that supported great music, you know, and that supported great art and important art. Someone that helped shift the culture, you know. And by that idea of shifting the culture, meaning to just believe in each other, you know, and that's what I want to be remembered for, is being able to create that shift, you know. And where one of the most impactful moments I've ever had was being in Chicago and someone saying to me that, you know what it is with Remix? Y'all taught us how to move. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, you know, gang culture's crazy out here. And you got to look at people, you got to know who's who, what, and it just stops so many people from talking to each other. And I was like, yeah, it's like that back home too, you know?
100%.
And they're like, yeah, but what we needed to do was to meet each other. And you created the safe space, not me individually, but us as a movement. We created this safe space that allowed for these people to meet each other. And that's where the magic happened. It wasn't that we prescribed it. You know what I mean? Is we created the space, we creted an environment.
Never would have had, just to see how much they are alike.
Yeah.
And how they can help each other, I guess.
Exactly. And just that's exactly what it is. How much folks are alike and how much they can help each other. Because at the end of the day, the vast majority of us have the same desires, the same fears, you know, and we've been pit against each other for a host of different reasons. But most of those reasons are for a small group of people to control a large amount of wealth. And it isn't to be on some conspiracy theory shit, but that's just the reality of capitalism and the system that we live in, is that a small group of people control a large amount of wealth, and they don't want to give that up And so there needs to be a bunch of systems in place that allow for that maintaining that status quo. So the public education system becomes what it is today when industrialization happens. Why? Because we need somewhere to put the kids when the parents are working 9 to 5. So now we have to make a school system that's based in 30 kids in the classroom with one person from 9 till at least 3:30, and then have whatever afterwards that's happening. Why do we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Because that's the time that you can have someone work for until they start to fade, and then they have to feed and re-energize, and then they can go back to work. Humans are grazing animals, right? We're supposed to just eat little bits all day. That's our natural state.
Yeah.
So a lot of things have been put into place that keep it like this.
Yeah.
And
I think what you're saying, not to cut you off, sorry.
Yeah.
It's a really good point, because I know in my friend group, for whatever reason, a lot of people get caught up in the conspiracy kind of theory, the Illuminati, whatever. When if people looked at it more from a realistic lens, like, yes, there are people who are conspiring and utilizing and implementing systems that are profitable, and there is some wickedness and evilness, but it's not necessarily about the like robes and chanting. Like, there's real systems in place. I think that if people
and by now, a lot of those systems in place are self-reinforcing, and the folks within them didn't create them, don't have even a malicious or a negative intent. They're just operating the system that they learned, and that is normal.
Right.
And how do we create new normals? It only takes 1 or 2 generations to create a new normal, right? And that's what's really exciting to me. Like, we understand the world as like the breadth of our life, right? But that's this. Like, certain cultures around the world practice 7-generation thinking, right? And like, that type of thinking is the thing that I'm really excited about. And when it comes back to, again, like legacy and whatever, is like, they started the shift maybe, or they continued the shift. They were in that push, that legacy, that in a couple generations from now, we're going to realize that greatness. You know, we're going to realize that space where folks are feeding each other, are making sure that energy is clean, and that we're all, you know, like these types of new realities where we're not looking at each other crazy because we just don't know. But now we've run up against each other, we've pushed up against each other, we realize we like that spice, we enjoy this type of thing, like, and there's a new reality that emerges. You know, those are the things, that's legacy. You know?
100%. The last question I want to ask you is, personally and with Remix Project, what's the end goal? First with Remix, is it to do similar to what you guys did and branch off to other places like Chicago and do it on a more global scale? Is that first I want to ask you, is that kind of the plan with Remix?
The plan with Remix is to continue to do what we do and to listen to what the community wants. And I think as long as we can continue to be a platform and a learning space for creative excellence, then I'm going to be really happy and proud. If it branches out into other spaces, it's going to be because it's been invited into those spaces by communities. Because in cities all around the world, people are using music and culture for community development, or they're doing frontline work, engaging through it. And because that's a good leg to cut, and then but I think that like Remix has never been, the idea of Remix was never to be the McDonald's of the social world, as we say. Like, it was never to be like popping up all over, because we also understand that it works in Toronto because the industry's here. There's major labels, there's marketing firms, there's advertising agencies, PR companies, there's major sports teams that are hiring editors, graphic designers, there's space for fashion labels, there's place for internships. There isn't necessarily that in Winnipeg. There's some companies there that would be great partners, but there isn't the infrastructure that's here. What we need more of is urban infrastructure in terms of the entertainment industry. We need more management companies, we need more independent record labels, we need more music publishers. We have some of the best talent in the world, and we have too much of it almost, because we don't have enough exit places for it. You know what I mean? It's like we're almost like a tap instead of like a shower. You know, like it should be like a spray of like all these things coming out. Instead, we just have this tap, and we're like, fuck, everyone's trying to get out this one spot, this one hole. So I think we need a lot more of the infrastructure because the talent is incredible in the city, and it has been for a long time. So yeah, I think to go on that and to come back to it, I think like if we're invited into more cities, we've started to do pop-ups where we basically do like 2-day summits, and we're bringing in special guests who talk about music production or photography and music business as well. And we actually do 2-day summits, and we'll have a guest headliner or whatever. So we did the first one in Vancouver, and we did the second one in Halifax, and we're looking to do one in Los Angeles. So those things are kind of like planting seeds, and then linking up with existing community leaders like I spoke of that are already doing this kind of work, and then saying, how do we then share our infrastructure, share the knowledge that we've like gained over these experiences to allow for this to like pop up over here. And if y'all want to call it something else, you can name it whatever you want. If you want to name it Remix, well then let's talk about how this works exactly.
That kind of brings it back to like the Jack the Rapper, how can you be down kind of era of bringing those people that you might not have access to that are experts in the field that you wanna enter to.
Yeah, it's it. It was like literally like, oh, we want to get on and we want to learn about this. Okay, cool. These people won't speak to us. What if we ask them to come do a workshop at this community center? Oh, now we have their number. Cool.
Right. That's simple.
Yeah.
Okay. So once again, it's been a pleasure, man, to sit down.
Absolutely.
A lot of gems in the conversation that I think can be useful for people who want to follow in the footsteps of you and the people that you started with, and creatives in general. So I really appreciate it, man.
No, I appreciate it too, and I love like this new design and just the spirit of what it is. Like that idea of, you get the vibrations that you put out, and so like peace over Toronto, like that's what we all are striving for. You know what I mean? Like because there's just no room for badness, man.
Yeah, and that's the same thing we're trying to put. That's the energy we're trying to put out there, man.
Yeah, it's gonna stop getting you money.
100%.
All of these things. Like 100%. If you're trying to be about cash feelings, you can't be about badness, because that shit doesn't add up. It really doesn't. And like you see it. Like if you can't do live shows in your city, then you can't make money.
Exactly.
And that's ridiculous. It sucks for everyone. So like anyone who wants to be an artist or who wants to be in the music business, they have to understand that like the polys can't translate.
Mm-hmm.
Certain things have to stay where they are. The more of us that are there that are willing to open doors and share knowledge and take risks to meet with different folks that you might not necessarily be sure about or how whatever, but you recognize that, they're trying to do something, I'm trying to do something, let's connect, the better,
Yeah.
This is what we have to be doing right now.
And I think just well said. I think with Cash Feelings, what we're trying to do too is taking a similar approach and reaching out to a lot of the artists who people might be kind of scared to go meet up with in places that people might be scared to go. But we come from more of a lens of these are young kids that are actively trying to make a better way. They could be doing a lot worse things than shooting these music videos and recording in studios. So I see it from that lens, more from them. Oh, like, look at these gang affiliated or kids that are caught up in polys. I see it as kids trying their hardest and investing their own money. So whatever I can do to support that and kind of preach positivity through them and through clothing and using it as a vehicle, we're hoping to do it now. And now through sharing stories with people like you and artists and creatives. That's kind of the plan, man. So I appreciate it once again.
It's beautiful and it's what's needed. Anyone that's trying to be progressive, I just want to see them win. And that's like, it doesn't matter what your area code is, it doesn't matter like what your zip code, I should say, or whatever it is, what block you're from. Like if you're trying to progress, that means that I'm going to win based off of you winning, because you're going to bring a shining light to the city. And as long as my shit is dope, I'm going to get on too. So that's the way I've always seen it and understood it, is like, if that person's shining, that means I got a better shot now, not fuck them for shining. You know what I mean? Like now they're bringing a light here, so maybe I'll get noticed if my shit is tight. So I got to make sure that my shit is tight. That's what I got to focus on.
And if more people had that lens, the more people that do have that lens, I think the more we all win.
For sure.
Once again with it. Thank you.
Absolutely. Pleasure, man. For sure.
All right, guys. Well, brother.
I know I rambled a bit.
Nah, man.